Microphone on. It's 7 p.m. and I would like to call the Township of Wainfleet regular council meeting of August 3rd, 2021 to order. And please stand for the national anthem. Okay, moving forward, disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Councillor McClellan. Microphone.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have two tonight, Public Works Staff Report number 17 and number 19.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other pecuniary interests? Okay, seeing none. Mayor's remarks. Please note that the meeting proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. Tomorrow, MPP Sam Oosterhoff will be on site at the front of our arena at 2 o'clock for a Canada Infrastructure Program funding announcement. And we're very excited about that and looking forward to it. That's tomorrow at 2 p.m. in front of the arena. We'll have a special council meeting on Tuesday, August 17th at 7 p.m. and our next regular meeting of council will be held Tuesday, August 24th at 7 p.m. Are there any councillor remarks? Okay, seeing none. Adoption of previous council minutes. Any comments or corrections or anything in there of note? Okay, seeing none. Motion being the minutes of the regular meeting of council held July 13th, 2021, and the minutes of the special meeting of council held July 27th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we have to do recorded vote tonight because we have two councillors zooming in. So Councillor McClellan, in favor or opposed?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And I'm in favor. Those are carried. We do not have any delegations this evening, so we'll move right into our staff reports and recommendations. From our CAO, we'll have the COVID-19 impact report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. To be brief with this report, pleased to announce that effective this Friday, Ontario is expected to exit step 3 of the province's reopening plan and move forward into whatever comes next. Based on that occurring on Friday, it is the intention of the township to reopen its offices to the general public for drop-in service starting next week. To that end, the doors will be unlocked. Members of the public will be able to enter the building. Appropriate COVID-19 protocols will be in place, but they will be able to conduct business as normal as possible within the town buildings starting on Monday, provided again that we do exit step 3 on Friday. We do encourage residents that have anything more than just the most basic business. So if you're coming in to pay your tax bill you can come on in, drop in without calling ahead. But just to ensure good levels of service, to ensure that we're able to meet appropriate protocols for people who might want to meet with staff. We have a limited number of COVID-prepared meeting rooms available, so we would ask that members of the public wanting to meet or have sort of an extensive discussion with staff, just call ahead, make sure you have an appointment sort of set up so that we can allocate the necessary meeting space that is appropriate under the circumstances. So very pleased to announce that. And our emergency control group is scheduled to meet tomorrow to finalize the preparations for next week based on some new regulations that were released, I want to say over the weekend. The other element to note is that COVID-19 vaccinations continue to be offered by Niagara Region, and the next scheduled clinic for Wainfleet was announced August 9th and 10th at the Firefighters Memorial Community Hall. So again, we look forward to hosting another session, and hopeful that perhaps there may be opportunities for further sessions to be held in the future. That's about the extent of the report from my perspective.
Okay, thank you. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive that report, ASR 21-2021 COVID report. Councillor Van Vliet moves it, and Councillor McClellan seconds it. Is there any discussion? Councillor Van Vliet.
Mr. Mayor, I just have one question because I've already been asked. Do we know with the announcement Friday if the arena is going to be open, or if the ice is going to be going in? I don't know who I'm asking this question to. The weekend of the Fall Fair, as it usually does, or do we not know yet?
Your worship, to Councillor Van Vliet. Wow, this is loud. Sorry. We are planning as usual after the Fall Fair to put the ice in, pending COVID protocols at the time. At that time, if everything goes the way it is going now, yes, we plan on opening right after the Fall Fair on the Sunday.
Thank you.
Or we'll be preparing the ice on the Sunday. Sorry.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote to receive this report. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
And Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
I'm in favor. That is carried. Moving on to our fire staff report, surplus apparatus, and we look to our fire chief to speak to that, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The report I bring before you this evening is in relation to a surplus piece of apparatus as a result of placing the new engine 3 in service. As you may recall, when the new engine went into service, the 2003 Kenworth was that was at Station 3 in Burnaby, was relocated to Station 1 in Winger, and the 2005 Chevrolet that was there has since been deemed for us as surplus. So the purpose of this evening is requesting council's direction as to how to dispose of the apparatus. The three options are, obviously we can sell it and use those funds to offset the cost of either the purchase of this truck or another piece. We can donate it to various foundations, Firefighters Without Borders, Global Fire, or alternatively we can keep the apparatus, which would incur costs and certainly not a recommended option. So that boils it down. So if there's any questions, I'll certainly take them.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So the recommended motion is that the Fire Staff Report 09-2021 respecting disposal of surplus fire apparatus be received, and that the Fire Chief be authorized to dispose of surplus fire apparatus as directed. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Cridland. Thank you. And discussion in regards to the options.
You'll get here soon.
Sorry, I'm many places.
No problem.
Go ahead.
No, I would recommend we put it up on Gov Deals and put it for sale.
Okay, so Councillor McClellan is recommending that we dispose of it for sale. Any other discussion or thoughts? Councillor Cridland? Councillor Cridland?
Thank you. I think that I would lean towards, through you, Mayor, sorry. I would lean towards option one as well. When I look at option one, it does discuss going towards the purchase or to be in reserve. So perhaps the treasurer can comment on how that will serve us in terms of budget.
Okay, thank you. Will, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the treasurer isn't with us this evening, but with respect to the options, again, with the, if we are able to successfully sell the equipment this calendar year, which ties into the year that we acquired the previous equipment, it certainly will reduce the amount that we need to debenture or borrow to pay for the new equipment. The alternative is, again, the proceeds can be put to a reserve for the use of future equipment needs. Again, it's really a sort of a discretionary decision to be made by council.
Okay, thank you. So if Councillor McClellan.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, this would be to the fire chief. Are we going to put in a reserve, like a bare minimum that we'll take for it? Because this time of year, it may not be something that everybody's on holidays, can't get a council together and make a decision. So, you know, if you want 40 for it, do you say, you know, 35 is my minimum and we wait for the next auction?
So we can do that, certainly if council wants. That's why I attach the appendices, so you can kind of see what some other similar apparatus have gone for. So certainly if council wanted to place a reserve, we could. What I would suggest very close to the number you just said, you know, 40,000 may be reasonable. And, you know, certainly we'll try it. And if we don't get a successful bidder, then we try again at another auction time.
I think they're every 30 days or something with gov deal, so it's.
Okay, so if everybody's in favor of that, so obviously there's consensus that we're going to put it up for sale as opposed to donated or anything like that. Donna, go ahead. Councillor Cridland, sorry.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. No, I'm again agreeing with what we're going forward for option one. And again, so if we have to be clear on the second part of that option, without the treasurer commenting, I would like to propose that it goes against the purchase of the new vehicle. So that's how I would position the motion or amend the motion.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is that we dispose of the fire apparatus by sale through auction. And we're putting a minimum on there, 40,000, yes? Does everybody agree with that?
I just threw that number out.
30.
The chief would know better what they're selling for, right? So.
Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Van Vliet.
Like, are we putting a minimum on it right now, or do we just, is he going to tell us?
I don't know, do we need to, Will, for
Or we
the
just accept
motion
the
aspect
highest
of it?
offer?
Through you, if you're prepared to put one in there now, by all means. Otherwise, you can direct staff to include a minimum reserve price at the time of us putting the bid in or the auction up on the site, and staff will use our best knowledge, our best ability to come up with an appropriate minimum reserve.
I think that's a great way to do it. I don't know what everybody else feels. Okay, so we'll give that direction to staff that they come up with a minimum bid for that, and that'd be for sale through auction. That is the motion. Any further discussion? Councillor Van Vliet?
It was Councillor Cridland's second part of that, putting the purchase towards
Where the money's going?
Pardon?
Sorry, what was the second part again?
I'll let Donna speak to it.
Councillor Cridland?
Thank you, through Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Van Vliet. Again, it's just leaving it open, and without the treasurer here, I don't mind it being discussed, but I would close this up by saying it will go towards the purchase. So reducing the debt would be how I would like to wrap up the option. So I think now we have three things. We're selling, we are going to set the minimum or a number of 40,000, and that the sale proceeds go towards the purchase. That's what I think we're voting on at the moment.
Okay, and that will form the part of the motion, so that's all been recorded by the clerk. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote. Opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In
Councillor
favor?
And Councillor Gilmore?
In favor.
And I'm in favor.
In favor.
That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to planning staff report, zoning bylaw amendment application Z0420 2021W, Daniel Candace Bunn, Land Pro Planning Solutions, and we look to Ms. Ivins to speak to that, please, our planner.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of council. So this report is in response to some concerns and comments made at the July 13th regular council meeting, where the draft plan of condominium application was considered, and the zoning bylaw amendment for that development was also up for consideration for a vacant lot on Wills Road. The proposed zoning amendment seeks to rezone the property from the development D zone to a residential R1 zone to permit single detached dwellings with a maximum lot coverage of 12%, accessory building lot coverage of 2.5%, and 1 secondary suite per lot. So council identified concerns with respect to the lot coverage request being dealt with through the zoning bylaw amendment rather than a variance process. The extent of the increase, so 7% to 12%. And there was some discussion about the ability for the units to be serviced by private septic system and requiring a septic system to be oversized to accommodate both a single detached dwelling and a secondary suite. So as a result of that discussion, council referred the zoning bylaw amendment back to staff to modify the bylaw by implementing a reduction from 12% to 7%, which is the current standard under the zoning bylaw, and to come back with additional information regarding septic. So I'll start off with the concerns regarding dealing with this request through a zoning amendment rather than a minor variance. So under the Planning Act, there are two ways in which a property owner can request a deviation from the zoning bylaw. So the first is a zoning bylaw amendment, and the other option is a minor variance. In my staff report, I go over both options and the consideration and criteria for evaluating each of those types of applications. And ultimately, when consulting with landowners, both the planning technician and myself review what deviations are needed from the zoning bylaw to permit proposed development. And we provide guidance to the landowner as to whether a zoning amendment or a minor variance would be more suitable based on what they're proposing. So in this instance, because a zoning bylaw amendment was already needed to rezone the property from a development zone to a residential zone, the requests for lot coverage were added to the zoning amendment in addition to the permissions for a secondary suite. And so I've taken a similar approach on other applications. I provided some examples in my report. So specifically, when we're doing surplus farm dwelling consents, and as a condition of that consent, they have to rezone the farm parcel to agricultural purposes only. Often, if that farm parcel doesn't meet the minimum lot area requirement, or there's a minor reduction in lot frontage or a setback, we'll include that in the zoning amendment rather than putting them through a minor variance process as well. In terms of the extent of the requested lot coverage, so 12% was requested to accommodate larger dwellings with a secondary suite as well as accessory structures. And when considering development proposals, such as the draft plan of condominium that was draft approved at the July 13th meeting, it's sound planning practice to set the development standards for the entire development rather than on a site-by-site basis after approvals are received. And so in this case, to avoid individual unit owners coming back for minor variances, we're setting the development standard ahead of time. Additionally, due to the condominium structure, the owners of the units, should the 12% not go through this evening and they wanted an increase in lot coverage, the future owners would have additional permissions through the condominium board process in order to make an application with the township. So it's not as straightforward as it would be with other landowners. In terms of the septic system, so I consulted with our chief building official, and the Ontario Building Code sets a minimum standard, and that minimum standard is based on a variety of factors, including for the proposed dwelling, including the number of bedrooms, how many plumbing fixtures there are, and the square footage of the structure. So the township does not have the authority to mandate a larger system than what is needed for a proposed structure. So if one of the units did not want a secondary suite and submitted a permit for a dwelling, and the corresponding septic application meets the building code minimum standards, the township is obligated to issue the permit. If the owner wishes to have a secondary suite at a later date, then through another building permit process, the septic would be reviewed, and depending on the extent or the capacity of the existing system, as well as what's needed for the secondary suite, that would be reviewed and modifications can be made to the septic system if needed. So the modified bylaw as requested by council, so that 7%, is attached as Appendix A to my report. And that is the bylaw that's included on the agenda for this evening. However, it's my opinion that the requested lot coverage of 12% is appropriate, and I have recommended that the bylaw attached as Appendix B to my report be adopted by council. So I'm available for any questions council may have, and I also have the applicant and their agent. They're joining us by Zoom if council has any questions for them as well.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. The proposed motion is that this report be received and that zoning bylaw amendment application 04-2021 W for lands described as concession for part lot 30 RP 59R 4992 part 1 except for RP 59R 8241 part 1 Township of Wainfleet be approved for the reasons outlined in PSR 8-2021 and PSR 9-2021. That the zoning bylaw amendment attached as Appendix B be adopted, and that the application is deemed to be consistent with the Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and other matters of provincial interest. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Thank you. And discussion. Councillor Van Vliet.
Mr. Mayor. Sarah, at the last meeting we discussed this. Did we ask this to be split into two different bylaws? One for the coverage and one for the rezoning?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Van Vliet. No, so the zoning bylaw amendment is done as one bylaw. It's not done as separate bylaws. So the zoning bylaw amendment currently, or the one that I'm recommending, contains three things. The overall lot coverage of 12%, accessory building lot coverage of 2.5%, and then permitting a secondary suite within as an accessory to a singles attached dwelling.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I do have a problem with the 12% coverage, as where everybody else only gets 7%, because these lots are, well, most of them are 1.1. One of them is 1.5 acres, and everybody else has to come to the Committee of Adjustment for a minor variance. So I don't think giving a blanket to one person who wants to build 6 houses seems fair across the board.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I second what Councillor Van Vliet says. Everybody else is 7%. You come in and ask if you need more. The other thing that even on the zoning, we're giving them a granny suite or a rental unit on every one of these condos that's going in. So there could be 6 families, and then there could be another 6 families that they're renting out to. There's nothing saying that they have to be a family member, or they can't be students, or right? So we're giving a lot away here. I think we should stick at 7%.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Gilmore.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. Through you to Sarah. I guess, I sort of started this at the last meeting. I'm curious, who came up with 7% in the first place? Like, my problem is, if 12% is okay, and quite frankly, I'm all right with 12%, as long as everybody gets to have 12%. But if I want to add a shop and I add 0.1% over 7, I have to pay for a minor variance. I mean, it will go through. But so who decided on 7% in the first place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gilmore. 7% is kind of a legacy requirement. So our previous zoning bylaw, which has been amended a number of times over the years, it was 7%. And when we looked at updating our the zoning bylaw that now governs all the lands outside of the hamlet, particularly in the lakeshore, because historically we were seeing a lot of lot coverage request increases for lakeshore properties. We had a look at what lot coverages would be acceptable across the lakeshore. So in the residential lakeshore zone, we have anywhere from 10 to 25%, and that's area specific. However, when it came to lots within the agricultural area, we kept the 7%. That was kind of a legacy from this current bylaw that governs the hamlets. Part of the reason for controlling lot coverage is to make sure that there's enough space for septic systems and that the development footprint isn't overwhelming in terms of built form. And it's my opinion that the increase from 7% to 12% doesn't affect these lots from being serviced appropriately. And again, the impact from built form, not much of a considerable impact when you're looking to go from 7 to 12%. Which is why I've recommended approval of 12%.
Okay, if I can just follow up, I don't disagree with anything you said. I don't think that 12% on a 1 acre lot is unreasonable. Certainly, it's not on a 1 hectare lot because that would be a very huge house. My point is, if it's good for this place, it's good for everybody. So if we're going to change it here, then I think we need to be committed to making a change across the board for everybody, so that someone that wants to add a little bigger shop doesn't have to go through the committee of adjustment to get 8 or 9 or 10 or anything like that. Like I said, I don't have a problem with the 12. I have a problem with the fairness aspect of leaving everybody else at 7. The lake shore, well, that's different, but in general, a 1 hectare lot is no problem at 7 anyway, because that's still a very huge dwelling. But if we're going to change it here, then I think we're changing it for everybody, or else we're not changing it. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor. And it's interesting. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
If I may follow up to Councillor Gilmore with respect to fairness. So, I mean, that's why we have these processes in place for people to request these deviations. And it doesn't necessarily mean that should be something that's across the township. We look at it on a site-by-site basis, whether it be a zoning amendment or a variance. In some circumstances, what may be suitable for one particular area or a particular lot may not be suitable in another context. So, so that's why we have these application processes, and that the residents have the ability to apply for their own lot to achieve a desired outcome. It doesn't necessarily mean that we need to open that up to everyone else. Although if council wants to look at that, we can certainly, when we look at our zoning bylaw update, we can look at that. But I just wanted to remind council that, you know, part of the application processes or the Planning Act processes that are available to us allow residents to come in and ask for these on a site-by-site basis.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my 2 cents worth here is I have no issue with 12% either. I'm not sure, you know, where the problem with that was. I asked today during my briefing right to the planner, where did the 7% come from? And it's just one of those things that was done historically and it's been stuck with. I would much rather see us be more site dependent, as Sarah just commented, where some sites may only be able to achieve 7-8% and some can easily achieve 12%. So it depends on your site. The fairness aspect of it, everybody gets 12. I don't buy that either, because if you can, as we the township can articulate that this site can only have 7 or 8 or 9%, then that's what it is. And if it can have 12, then that's what it can have. So that's how I look at that. So I don't have an issue with this, and I'd like to, there may have to be some work done on the bylaw in the future as we move forward, but I don't have a problem with this one. Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I'm not thinking I'm going to be supporting this tonight. I would be going with Appendix A for a couple of reasons. Certainly no question around the tools that obviously our planner is bringing forward to address or make this request. I totally understand that this is an appropriate tool to achieve that, as is our Committee of Adjustment. So again, I'm pretty sure this is our first condominium in terms of a plan. I think the planner did kind of mention that it would be it might be a little bit more difficult. So I would like to stay the same as we've been and test this to see how it exercises itself. So by doing Appendix A tonight, it will certainly allow people to build a reasonable home. There's many homes less than 7%, no doubt. So I don't think that's restricting. And then we see what unfolds. And will the Committee of Adjustment serve a condominium fairly? We have no idea because we've not done that before. But this again, this won't be the last one. And I'd like to hold this one at the same as the rest of the township right now, and let the Committee of Adjustments tools allow whatever exceptions there might be after tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, you have comments for that?
Yes, just some additional points for discussion, I guess. One example, and I'll bring council back to when we approved the plan of subdivision for Marshville Drive. So we went through the draft approval process and then fulfillment of those draft plans of draft conditions of draft approval, and then granted final approval. And then it was a couple of months later, they went to build their first model home and realized that they needed a reduced front yard setback in order to meet the goals of their tree savings plan for the wooded area. And so they came in for a minor variance. At that time, I received a couple of calls from councilors noting that they had wished that they had thought of that and done that through the development approvals process, and that it didn't really seem right to come for a variance after the fact. So I just want to point out that in this situation, kind of the reverse is what I'm hearing, that we don't want to deal with an overall guide towards development and instead want to address this through minor variances later on. So I just want to point that out in terms of consistency, because even though it's a plan of condominium, it's still very much similar in terms of the built form that we're going to see within one of our hamlets.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Vliet, you were next.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree with what Councillor Cridland said. We have the Committee of Adjustments in place for a reason. And I also agree with Councillor Gilmore. I don't have a problem with the 12% either. I have a problem with the fairness. Everybody else is at 7%, and then we just do 12%. I think we'd be opening a can of worms. And there is a lot of lots out there that are 1 acres that do support a septic and a cistern, mine being one of them, So I'm just, like I said, I'm not going to agree with the 12%. I think we should do 7 and let the Committee of Adjustment figure it out.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, just to remind council that deferring these to the Committee of Adjustment, again, it's one way of handling these requests. Zoning amendment is another. So there may be circumstances out there where a property owner comes in and they want a 20% lot coverage, permits 10 or 7, and they can't meet those 4 tests for a variance. And so my guidance to them is to apply for a zoning amendment. And so you could potentially see an application before council to consider that request. So I just remind that we are considering a zoning bylaw amendment, which is an appropriate tool to consider this request. And so I don't think deferring it to the committee on a unit by unit basis is the right way to go about this when we're talking about this this development concept as a whole.
Yeah, I look at this and we're creating more bureaucracy and we're creating more government oversight here. We are the governing body of Wainfleet above the Committee of Adjustment. To me, this is a decision that we can make. I don't think it's just creating more bureaucracy, sending it down to the Committee of Adjustment. So that's my thoughts. I don't know why we're not making that decision and moving forward ourselves. We're the council here. So, Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't disagree with you on that. But my question is to Sarah, how long would it take you to get a proposed bylaw change that everything that's 1 acre or greater has a 12% lot coverage to us, and then at that time it would just go retroactive to this development as well? Like, can you get that to us by the next council meeting? And then it's fair across the board. Like, I see Will shaking his head here, but you know what? It's somebody's going to come and say, well, I did one 6 months ago, and I had to go to Committee of Adjustment, and I had to, or Saw Developments is going to come and say the same thing. We had it, and we had to go to Committee of Adjustment. You know, it's not fair. You're not doing. So let's just change it across the board right now. We all agree 12 isn't a problem on most lots. So just bring it to us. Let's get it changed and get rid of as much government as we can.
Okay, Sarah, go ahead.
It goes retroactive right away as soon as the lot coverage changes. Everybody's.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor McClellan. So it's not as simple as just bringing back a bylaw at the next meeting. There are notice requirements and public meeting requirements in order to make that kind of change to the zoning bylaw. The Hamlets are currently governed by an older bylaw, and so one of the projects on my desk is the updating the Hamlet zoning. So through that process, I can add looking at lot coverage in terms of increasing that from a 7% to 12% or some other number, and we can go through that when I present staff reports, when I bring that to the table. It wouldn't be retroactive, though. It would be in effect as of the date of that bylaw. So in this instance, it wouldn't help this particular applicant unless they were willing to wait until that change were made. But again, I remind council that we have the zoning bylaw amendment process in place, and the applicant is requesting on a site-specific basis, and that is certainly an appropriate mechanism for requesting this. But if council wanted me to look at the Hamlet as a whole, I can certainly add that as part of that project scope, but it's not as simple as bringing it back at the next meeting.
My thoughts on this is that we approve, for myself, we approve option A at 12%. Then we send the bylaw back to staff to do a rework and bring that back and go from there. That's my thoughts. Now, Mr. Sullivan had his hand up to speak. He's not a delegation, but if all of council agrees that they wish to hear from him, we can do that. So is anyone opposed to hearing from him? If so, please, Terry or Councillor Gilmore or Cridland. Nobody's opposed?
I'm fine.
Okay, Mr. Sullivan, you have the floor for a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, and all of council. Appreciate the chance to speak to this tonight. if I can go to the 7 to 12% in terms of the fairness, when Sarah's mentioning, I agree with everything Sarah's saying tonight. The fairness aspect, the 7% does come from a legacy issue. I, at one time previously, was the planner in Wainfleet, and it was applicable at that time. I can suggest that the 7% is legacy for agricultural areas, and the 12% is more of an urban area, so a Hamlet designation or a Hamlet standard. You might not put the 12% into non-Hamlet areas. In terms of council's consideration of future variants, in my experience, a zoning bylaw amendment is a higher test. It requires council approval. A variance is one through a committee of adjustment, so the zoning amendment is a superior test. And to apply for that at this point is, well, in my view, it's appropriate. And there was questions as well, if I may, about the ability of the lots to accommodate servicing. We had a hydrogeological investigation done on the property, which said that lots can handle this. We also had the septic system designed by a professional, and that was all part of the application, and that was before council. We also have several conditions of approval for the condominium, which will address this. So, from my perspective, going from 7 to 12%, we're taking the appropriate route here, going through council. And if council, as Sarah's already said, if they wish to make this fair and make it 12% to all hamlets, for example, that would be a future decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions stemming from that? Councillor Van Vliet.
Mr. Mayor, so in the future, if we do pass the 12%, are we assured that somebody's not from the new development isn't going to come and ask for a minor variance to, say, build an addition onto their garage or a porch or what have you? Like, is 12% the max, or are they going to come to the Committee of Adjustment and ask for a minor variance above the 12%?
Sarah, I guess that's for you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess that's always a possibility, that if a future owner felt like 12% wasn't enough, they would have the same mechanism to either do a zoning amendment or a variance application, and that would be evaluated at that time. And I can't comment as to whether or not that would be approved. Again, we'd have to look at what the standards are at the time they request that, and the policies in place when they request that. Yeah, but I mean, I think the primary goal here is to set the standard for all of the units, and hope that 12% is the maximum needed, and based on kind of the intent of the applicant and the plans of the applicant, that 12% is in line with what they're looking to do. But you're correct that won't stop a future owner for potentially applying for a variance.
Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could we not put it on record of title? The 12% is the maximum. When you're buying a place, you know it's 12%, that's it. You don't get to come down and ask for any more. I mean, we're going way above and beyond what we normally do. So let's just end it right here so we don't end up with big shops and garages in the back and everything else, because it is a condo. Your neighbors may not, I don't know what the condo agreement says. We've never seen that. That should be something that we know, the rules that are written in of what can happen for the people that are buying these. So I'm in favor. If you want to lock it at 12, I'll go with 12, but that's all that subdivision gets.
Sarah, comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the only hesitation I have on that is, and maybe it's a legal question, is whether or not that takes away the rights given under the Planning Act to any particular landowner. So while we set the standard at 12% in the zoning bylaw, whether that be the zoning bylaw that applies to all hamlet lands or a site-specific zoning bylaw, just because they've received those permissions, I don't believe that that necessarily takes away the other rights that they have under the Planning Act to make an application. And I don't know if perhaps the CAO has any comment for that, but that's my initial hesitation in terms of including something like that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. I would tend to agree with Sarah's opinion there. Again, neither of us are lawyers, and we can certainly do some more research, but the Planning Act, again, provides an opportunity for any citizen to make application to amend or modify the established rules that exist with respect to the various planning matters. So notwithstanding us drawing a hard line in the sand, anyone can still come forward in the future. Again, we can put that question to our solicitor, but at this time, I agree with Sarah and suggest that we cannot stop someone from applying in the future.
I'm with Councillor McClellan on this. I don't understand why we as the township can't draw a line in the sand, period. And it's 12% max and no more. The Committee of Adjustment has no decision-making in that process. That seems reasonable to me, because otherwise, you know, it's everybody can come and you're 12% or you're 7% even now, it doesn't mean anything. Committee of Adjustment would make those decisions. So that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see it go to 12, stay at 12 hard. Boom, no more different. And it can't get bigger, can't get smaller, it can, of course. So, Councillor McCollum.
So my question would be to Mr. Colossus, the CAO. Then could you ask under a condo corporation, because that's what this is, if that rule applies? Because I know if you buy a condo, they tell you what color blinds you put in, that's all part of it in a building. This is a condo by the same name. Otherwise, change the name and call it a subdivision, and let's change the rules and how it goes. This gentleman knows what he's doing. If it's 12 and he wants to agree to it and the lawyers say it, then it stays at that. If not, I say we go at 7 and let everybody fight their way up to battle later.
Go ahead,
Mr. Mayor, to council. I must apologize. I don't know the Condominium Act very well, and whether or not that is a term that can be included as part of any sort of purchase agreement that the corporation has with its individual tenants, for lack of a better language. But that is certainly sounds like something we could perhaps investigate and determine whether that's doable.
Okay, so any other discussion? So it's a little bit mixed here. The recommendation, the motion on the floor is that Appendix B be adopted. That is deemed to be with the provincial policy statement, so I guess we need to vote on that motion first of all, and either it's going to go at 12% or it's not, and then we can administratively later look at bringing back the bylaw with changes, I think, is what everybody's basically wanting to give direction to staff. So, if there's no further questions, we'll vote on this. Oh, sorry. Mr. Bunce, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. In regards to this, I mean, my planner, Mr. Sullivan, had spoke on this, that I do have, you know, reports from engineered, from our septic design, from our hydrogeological engineer, that's saying that, you know, these lots are sufficient enough to take 12%. In regards to fairness, I mean, as far as I know, everyone has the option to go to the town and apply for a lot increase. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to get it. Their lot has to sustain, their lot has to sustain this, and they're going to have certain studies done that, you know, support that decision for that 12%. I'm not saying that every home in that subdivision is going to use the maximum amount of percentage. But for this purpose, I do have the appropriate paperwork and engineered people behind this saying that these lots can handle that. And I would like to see this to go through. I mean, everybody, like I said, everybody else has the option of applying for certain lot percentages. It's completely fair across the board. It's whether or not their lot can support what they're asking for. And in this case, these lots can support the 12% of what I'm asking for. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buns. Any comment or question on that before we vote? Okay, seeing none then. So the motion is to approve the 12% attached as Appendix B, and that the application meets the provincial policy statement and the report be received. It's on the floor. And for the 12%, Councillor McClellan, opposed or in favor?
Opposed.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Opposed.
Councillor Cridland. Councillor Cridland.
Opposed.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
Opposed.
Thank you. We have your vote, Councillor Cridland. Councillor Gilmore is in favor, and I will be recorded as being in favor. But that motion is defeated, 3-2. Okay, so to move this along forward, in discussion with our CAO, we'll try it with Appendix A, which is the 7%. And Councillor McClellan, favor and opposed?
In favor.
Oh, sorry, yeah, mover and a seconder for Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Move it. Any further discussion? Seeing none, opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Opposed.
And I'm opposed. That is carried, 3-2. So it is Appendix B is adopted, or Appendix A is adopted at 7%. Okay. And yeah, the bylaw will be at the end of the meeting to cover that. So, okay, moving on.
Excuse me.
Councillor McCollum.
Just one question to you, Mr. Mayor. So are we gonna look at if we can put a 12% on it and a hard lock on it, or just no? Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in this specific case?
Yes.
As it stands right now, no, you're
Okay.
passing.
I was trying to give them the option if we could lock it in, then we'd lock it in and it stays there, but I probably should have asked that 2 minutes ago.
Okay, moving on to transfer of abandoned rail corridor, and we'll look to our planner to speak to that one.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So my memo outlines the process in place established by previous council to deal with the abandoned rail corridor. And these lands have been declared surplus to the township's needs. And there's a policy in place and with respect to how to deal with these, with the disposal of the rail corridor. So the policy requires that parts of the rail corridor are disposed and merged with adjacent properties, and that no new lots are to be created through the disposal of the corridor. So we've received 2 applications, one from 248-4355 Ontario Limited, and another from David John Brookelman to purchase the parts of the corridor that are adjacent to their property, which is off of Winger Road. And the lands in question are identified as parts 7 through 10 on reference plan 59R14253, which is attached to the memo. In order to complete the transaction, a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents is required to be adopted, and that bylaw is on the council for consideration later this evening.
Thank you. So the motion being the memorandum from the planner respecting bylaw 26, 2021, transfer of part of the abandoned rail corridor be received for information. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion? Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I propose that we have this deferred and staff come back to us with some other options of different things that we could do with this land, be it use it for utility corridors, use it that we create housing lots on it, that I just don't see that every asset we have is only worth $1. And every year at budget, we're scrambling whether we can give our seniors $1 or to do the, there's an opportunity here. I understand there's 20 of them left on this corridor. And we kick and scrape and beat each other up at budget time for dollars. And there's an opportunity here to put some money in our pocket. And I just think we should look at it. Other municipalities have. And it's not just municipalities in Niagara, it's in Alderman and Norfolk as well. And whether we do that, or if we can't do it, if we have lots that aren't there, maybe we'll plant trees on them and make a walking trailways for our people. But I think we need some reports from staff rather than pass this on.
Okay, Councillor, sorry, did you ask for deferral there or referral?
I asked for a deferral on this and have staff come back to us with a report with some options.
Okay, a seconder for that. Councillor Van Vliet seconds it. And there's no discussion on a deferral, so that item is deferred. Recorded vote, yeah. Okay, recorded vote on the deferral. Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
Okay, and I'm in favor. That is carried. Okay, we'll move on to the site plan approval for the Central Fire Station. And I look to the Fire Chief to present that, please. Oh, Sarah, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the fire chief is available should any questions come up, but I'll just do a brief intro. So the township property in Chambers Corners was the subject of an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment to redesignate and rezone the property to permit a fire station. With those permissions in place, the next step is site plan approval. And a site plan application was submitted by the township's architect. And in support of the application, materials were submitted, such as the site plan and elevation drawings, which are attached as Appendix A to the report, some civil engineering plans, septic design, a stormwater management report, and traffic brief to satisfy requirements of commenting agencies. So briefly, I've reviewed the proposed fire station from a site layout perspective, as well as a zoning perspective. And it's my opinion that the proposed design is consistent with the site plan guidelines, and I've detailed those in my report. As part of the application process, it was circulated to various agencies and township departments, and I've attached those comments as Appendix C and provided a summary in my report. And so I'm recommending that the application be approved, subject to the conditions listed in Appendix B, and also that the staff be authorized to make some minor modifications to the approved drawings, should any be required as a result of pending MTO comments. That was added because we did receive MTO comments late, and they requested some additional information before preparing final comments. And so we're working on that information to send over to them. Nothing that we can't address through minor tweaks and getting that additional information to MTO. So by having that authorization, we can make those minor adjustments to satisfy the MTO, and the fire department can move ahead. And I understand there's a special meeting coming up to talk about that as well.
Okay, thank you. So proposed motion that planning staff report 10/2021 be received, that the site plan approval be granted to application SP 02/2021 debut for the Central Fire Station project located at 42143 Highway 3, concession for part of Lot 20, Township of Wainfleet, and that the site plan approval be subject to the conditions listed in Appendix B, which are required to be fulfilled before issuance of a building permit, and that staff be authorized to make minor modifications to the approved drawings should any modifications be required as a result of pending Ministry of Transportation comments. Mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. And discussion. I see nobody's hands up. Okay, no discussion. And do a recorded vote then, in favor or opposed. Councillor McClellan?
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet?
In favor.
Councillor Cridland?
In favor?
Councillor Gilmore?
Favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Public Works Staff Report, award of tender for asphalt rehabilitation. I think Councillor McClellan called a pecuniary interest on that, so he's leaving. And I look to our operations manager to give a brief report on that, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you and to members of council. The first report is Public Works Staff Report 017-2021. It's to award the final asphalt and topsoil restoration for Maplewood and Woodland Drive. Staff prepared a tender following the township procurement policy, and various contractors and local associations were notified of tender opportunity. Upon the tender closing, we received 5 bids as listed in the report. Staff are recommending that the manager of operations be directed to engage the services of Brennan Paving as the lowest bidder to complete the project.
Okay, thank you. Some proposed motion being that PWSR 17-2021 respecting award of asphalt road rehabilitation tender for Maplewood Drive and Woodland Drive be received, and that council direct the manager of operations to engage the services of Brennan Paving to complete the 2021 asphalt road rehabilitation. Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Van Vliet, seconded by Councillor Gilmore. And any discussion? Councillor Cridland, were you moving or seconding, or go ahead? Councillor Cridland, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Again, this probably is for Treasury, but we've noted that it's 141 out of the 333. So the question is the 141 the total of the capital for these 2 roads, or is there more capital required for these 2 roads to be completed? It's fairly general, but perhaps the CAO can answer.
Okay, I look to Richard for that, please.
Through your worship, this is just a portion of that project. Staff have already completed all the upgrades to the necessary ditching and drainage works, including all the culvert installations, catch basins, etc. That's previously attached to that to the payment already. So this is to finalize the asphalt and the topsoil just for the restoration. So it's only a portion of the capital project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Richard, I'm going to have the same question for 17, 18, and 19. If we know a date, we're starting and a date we're ending.
Through your worship, through yourself to Councillor Van Vliet, we will submit to them tomorrow, depending the outcome of council's decision tonight. We will notify the contractor. And then they will obviously have to schedule their equipment and manpower and put it into their process. We have a completion date of before October.
Okay, any other questions? And we shall vote on that. Opposed or in favor? Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. We'll skip up to number 19, Public Works Report 19, because that also involves Councillor McClellan, and he needs to be out of the room on that one, so we'll skip to that one and then come back to 18. It's award for scour protection of Quarry Road and Malawani Road bridges. And again, we look to Mr. Nan to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Worship. Through yourself to members of council, this report is to award the second of the 3 bridge projects. The first project included the waterproofing of the Burloing and the Meisner bridges, and the third project, which will be the replacement of the Gents Road Bridge in the future. This project is to install scour protection to protect the footings of the bridges at Quarry Road and the Malawani locations. Ellis Engineering prepared an RFQ and contacted various local companies capable of performing the work, and the results are attached. Upon the closing, we received 2 bidders, and staff are recommending it be awarded to the lowest bidder, CRL Campbell Construction and Drainage Limited, and also to advise that we have already received the permits from the MPCA to perform the work.
Okay, thank you. So the recommended motion is that Public Works Staff Report 19-2021 respecting award for scour protection of Quarry Road and Malawani Road Bridge be received, and that Council direct the Manager of Operations to engage the services of CRL Campbell Construction and Drainage Limited to complete the scour protection for the Quarry Road Bridge and Malawani Road Bridge. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor. Councillor Gilmore, and I think I saw Councillor Cridland's hand go up. I'm sure I did. Yep. Okay, so, and discussion. Okay, discussion. Anyone? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you again. Through you, Mayor, thank you again for Richard for getting so much of this on the go. But this one bid, when you see a bid with the gap as large as it is, I just have to ask the question. I don't know exactly, what the details are of scouring a bridge, but is there some reason, are we missing something by picking the lower bid because of the difference of the higher bid? So just your reassurances on this lower bid would be what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Cridland, I did review it with the engineering firm that's doing the design work for it. And he believes that they didn't miss anything in the quantities estimates, so they weren't sure either why the bids were such a large discrepancy.
Okay, any follow-up, Councillor Cridland?
No, but thank you for having that on file. So that's great. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion or comments? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote, opposed or in favor. Councillor Van Vliet.
In favor.
Councillor Cridland.
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
And I am in favor. That is carried. And now have Councillor McClellan come back in.
Through you, Mayor, I don't know that we asked Councillor Van Vliet's question of when on that one, but we can catch it on the next one.
Good catch.
Good catch. Okay, thank you, Councillor McClellan. And now we'll do Public Works Report 18-2021, award of tendering for asphalt patching. And we look to Mr. Nan again to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Worship. This is the word, again, staff prepared a tender based on the procurement policies of the township. Various contractors, local associations were notified of the tender opportunity. The asphalt patching consists of restoration of asphalt driveways and road cuts due to culvert replacements. Additionally, the restoration from the storm sewer replacement at the library and arena. As mentioned in the report, township staff combined 2 storm sewer sections into a single system, now outletting into a township-owned drain. Upon the tender closing, we received 2 bids, as listed in the report. Staff are recommending that the Manager of Operations be directed to engage the services of R. Griffin Construction as the lowest bidder to complete the project.
Thank you. So the proposed motion being that this report 18-2021 respecting award of asphalt patching be received, and that council direct the Manager of Operations to engage the services of R. Griffin Construction to complete the 2021 asphalt patching. I have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor McClellan. And is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, a recorded vote. Councillor McClellan.
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor Cridland,
In favor.
and Councillor Gilmore.
In favor.
In favor.
And I'm in favor. That is carried. Okay, that takes us to review of correspondence. Was there any correspondence? There was none notified to be lifted out, so move over that. And go to the bylaws. At bylaw number 26, 2021, and bylaw number 27, 2021, as listed on the agenda, be read and passed this third day of August, 2021. A mover and a seconder for that, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. The first bylaw regarding the transfer of the railway corridors,
Oh.
I believe that has been deferred by virtue of a motion earlier this evening, so bylaw A as listed in the agenda does not need to be dealt with, just bylaw B. And again, for clarification, bylaw B as detailed in the agenda is the 7% bylaw, which council had previously requested and then reconfirmed at its meeting earlier this evening.
Thank you for that catch, Mr. CAO. So we're only dealing with the second bylaw, the 7% on the development, which was voted for. So any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, recorded vote. Do we have moved it? Moved and seconded yet. So Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet, and that is now on the floor. And any discussion? Seeing none. Opposed or in favor? Councillor McClellan,
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor Cridland,
In favor.
Councillor Gilmore,
Favor.
and I'm in favor. There are no notices of motion. Any notices by anybody? Okay, we move to a closed meeting. The council now moved into closed session to discuss item under section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act 2001, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. 2 items, litigation matters. And B, item under section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. 1 item, a building department matter. And minutes of the closed meeting of council held July 13th, 2021. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Any discussion? Okay, and vote to remove into closed session. Councillor McClellan,
In favor.
Councillor Van Vliet,
In favor.
Councillor Cridland,
In favor.
and Councillor Gilmore.
Favor.
And that is carried. We'll now move into closed session.